I haven't. Uh, no one else is speaking up this music thing. The one thing that I find very interesting is that we all have heard stories about, and actually lately with the Tom DeLonge and this whole Tic Tac thing, right? So with the whole Tic Tac thing, um, there was a point where the uh, Air Force or whatever, where they were talking about where they were going to rendezvous during one of the incidences, and it turns out that the craft got there before they did, and was waiting like it knew that they were going to be there. So, and that's part of what I've been hearing as far as what, the big deal. Like, how did they know? How did they know before we got there? Which means that they probably were reading our minds. So when us experiencers, we're having these experiences, how do we know that they're really ours? There was one thing that I had heard not too long ago that, and I've experienced this, at least I think I have, in one of my latest experiences, like OBE or, lucid dream, whatever you want to call it, where something was happening. I was out, and that you get out. And a lot of times I would look over to my left or to my right, and my girlfriend's there, and she's laying there sleeping. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to, go somewhere. However, this time I did something with her, and what was odd was that I believe that what I was experiencing wasn't actually what I was experiencing. I think I was shown something, but something else was happening to me, and I could feel it. And there was a little girl, which made absolutely no sense, that this little 5-year-old girl was in the bedroom and, on the edge of the bed. I'm like, what is she doing here? Meanwhile, there was something happening to me. I feel it happen. And then, I looked over and there was someone else in the room, and something was being done to me. Okay. I was being probed, I'll just say. I was being probed. So, and it wasn't unpleasant, but it wasn't pleasant. It was just pressure, and I felt like I was being probed. And I thought, now, what is this? So when I woke up, I thought, well, what the hell was that? Why? It made no sense that the little girl was there. It made no sense what I was doing with my girlfriend. We don't do that. So it was very odd. And then it made me think of how they, the ETs or whoever, whatever, can show you something. It's a virtual reality, but it masks what's really happening in reality. So, but I'm out of body, so I know that it's not reality, but who knows how that works. And so it leads me to think that the Tic Tac video and how this craft got to where the Air Force was talking, let's go here. And this thing ended up there before they did. So we're having all these experiences and we think that they're ours. What if they're not? What if all these things that we're talking about, all these experiences, what if they were a projection? And I'm not talking about us living in a, simulated reality and all that kind of stuff. That's a whole different topic. But what if? And we know, we've heard it over and over again, that it seems like they can project a whole different virtual reality in front of our faces, and we feel it. And the weird thing is, I wasn't even scared. I mean, one of my other, which is odd because, you know, I am trained physically to, you know, if you touch me in a certain way, you're going to get hurt. So, you know, here's a quick example, and I got to make it quicker, so I don't want to take up all the time here. 3 experiences ago, I woke up, and sometimes you're blind. Sometimes I can't like open my other eyes. I'll just say. So I'm blind. I'm laying there. I'm like, oh my God, I can't see. I'll just ride this out. So I sat up on the edge of my bed, and I can't see. I'm like, I'll just ride it out because you don't want to leave. It's a really neat feeling. I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, right? And then I felt somebody grab my left arm. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. Now, I should not react that way. I should be kicking and screaming and, you know, fighting, right? Because that's what I'm trained to do, fight. So I didn't fight. I wasn't even scared. So I'm like, oh, my God. Oh, okay. So then I was thinking, all right, so I know that I'm lucid. I know that my physical body is sleeping. Maybe I'm sleeping on something. I got my arm twisted or whatever, and I'm feeling physical pain. When you're out there, you can actually get in contact with your physical self. So I assessed my physical self and thought, oh, well, I'm not hurting myself. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not sleeping on my phone. So I thought, okay, well, if somebody's grabbing my arm, you know, their wrist's got to be right there. So I'm going to go reach over and grab their wrist. Well, guess what? I reached over and I grabbed a wrist. So I thought, well, this is really heavy. So let me see what the skin feels like. It was kind of, I don't know. It wasn't scaly, I would say, but it was thick skin, and then there was bone underneath. I'm like, okay. And I should be screaming or kicking and waking myself up. For some reason, I was calm. It was weird. So the hand motioned for me to get up. Okay. So I stand up. This thing still has me by my wrist. I let it go, and it moved me forward, moved me to the right. It walked me out of my bedroom into the living room, turned me right, and I knew I was in front of my window. And keep this in mind. When I come out of some of those lucid experiences, you just don't wake up. It's like, oh, man, do I really have to get up? Oh, and you hear all these sounds and this, like your electric shocks, and you're like, oh, man, I don't want to go. No. I got to the window, knew I was there. This thing still had my arm or whatever it was. I tried to open my inner eyes, and all I could see, because you'll wake up. And I didn't want to wake up. So all I could see was grayish, bluish, short, maybe figures, maybe. And I could have been making it up in my mind. I don't know, but that's what I thought maybe was on the left side. I'm in front of the window, and I say, well, if you're going to take me up there, I hope it doesn't hurt too bad. And I was laying on my back in my bed, and I was out of it, which was unusual. So are we experiencing a regular lucid dream or projection?
I don't believe it's a projection because, well, for one thing, a lot of people have witnesses that are with them at the time that can corroborate their story. And there's also physical evidence like burn marks on their skin and radiation in the area where the ship was. And so you can't write something like that off as a projection when there's physical evidence for it. And also, in my case, I wasn't sleeping at the time. We were on our way home from playing a gig, and I was wide awake. We were all wide awake when this happened. It was a physical phenomenon that took place. It wasn't a projection. It was real.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. What you're experiencing there, Rob, was a real manifestation, just as Steve and his friends experienced. But it's kind of scary in a way because if you think about it, they're able to exhibit a full range of presence from fully material to fully subtle to disappearing. And so whatever's coming, whatever's happening, it's serious, and it should be taken very seriously, in my opinion. And that's why I ask again about the symbolism. Now, Rob brought up the Tic Tac UFO thing that got a lot of publicity recently. And I took a look at it because I'm interested in symbolism, and I studied it for quite a few years, about 40 years. And so I'm going to hold up. Can you see this? If I hold it up to the screen here, can you see that?
Yeah.
And if you see, what I did there is I drew one of the Tic Tacs. And inside the Tic Tac, I put 2 circles. And you can do that. Take an image of the Tic Tac off the internet, and you can draw a circle that'll fill in one end of the Tic Tac and the other end of the Tic Tac, and they overlap. And where they overlap, can you see it there?
Mm-hmm.
There's that
yeah. But you could look at it like that's a fractal.
Well, I'm looking at it as a spindle torus, and the spindle torus. If you go to sacred geometry,
mm-hmm. I think your sound cut out on you.
We lost your audio.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. But anyway, that's just another example of, symbolism connected with UFOs showing up in their geometry. They're communicating with us, and nobody's talking about the meaning of these symbols. And there's meaning in these symbols. So, but Rob, you have some really interesting experiences. Not to play down Steve's. If you would like to share any of them with you, I'll be glad to leave my email on the chat. So it's up to you.
Yeah, I can do that. I have a plethora of experiences that I really can't talk to people that I know because and even in my books, you know what I did? I actually have a series. It's on Amazon. It's called The One Way, but it's an actual novel. It's not me talking about my experiences. It's a novel, but in the novel, some of the characters experience my experiences.
Okay, and it's called The One Way.
Say what?
It's called The One Way?
Yeah, it's just one way, but one way is spelled with one word. And it's a trilogy. So the first 2 are out there. The third one I'm writing. And in there, I go in there. The book, you wouldn't know if it's an extraterrestrials. You wouldn't know if it's God or if it's angels or if it's. I leave it wide open for now for the reader to figure out what's going on. There's I go over Einstein, Rosen bridges. I go over frequencies, vibrations. I call it bleed over, where you can bleed from one reality to another or one intention to another, which causes an effect, sort of like the Mandela effect. I cover everything that I think all of us have read about and have talked about. So I crammed everything in this series so that the reader, and it's got to be for the most part, readers like us, who are going to say, well, what are we really dealing with? And, and I don't in other words, it's not like a documentary of Robin's life or Robin's experiences. It is a novel. It's about terrorism. And it's crazy thing. Now, the crazy thing is that I had met a priest, and this priest told me that the reason why when you go back and rewrite what you read, it sounds like you didn't write it. The priest said that you didn't, that somebody else did, like it was downloaded. So what is happening is information coming out of the media now, like for instance, the people in Cuba, there's like 20 Americans in Cuba, they have head trauma and they think that it's a sonic weapon. It just happened again in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks in China, right?
Right.
They think some type of sonic weapon. Well, my second book that covers all of that was written in 2016. It was published in 2016. So I'm way ahead of what's coming out in the media. This just came out yesterday in the media. I don't watch TV, hardly. But my girlfriend and I, we watched the news, and they were talking about how the terrorists are using domestic drones, right?
Yeah.
That's in my book. But I wrote it in it was published in 2016.
How do you spell the name of your book, Rob?
One way, but it's one word, like Oneway.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and then there's two of them. One is called One Way, subtitled The Message. The other book is One Way, subtitled The Oracle. The Oracle, if you're a reader, that's the one that you want to read because it picks up from where the first book led off. However, you'll get enough out of book one to understand what happened in book two. I mean, you'll get an idea of what happened in book one if you read book two, because it's a more heavier read. Book one is really easy, and it starts off real slow, and they talk about, vibrations and quantum physics and subatomic particles. All of us know what that's all about, right? However, in book two, I go into how maybe our consciousness interacts with the Higgs field and creates matter. And I mean, I go into some really deep stuff. However, it's a novel.
Yeah.
So
you don't have a background. You don't have a background in physics. You're just writing a novel.
Yeah, I don't have a background in physics. I studied some of it. Actually, in the third book, and I sent an email to Grant's partner, and I said to her, I said, if you hear anything about how some of these quantum computers are built, because what I did in the book, if I'm being given information, let's just say Robin is being downloaded information, right?
Yeah.
So I'm starting to feel that because of what's coming out in the public, and I had already written it. So if information comes out about how some of these quantum computers are written, because are built, and how they process information, because I believe that they have to be most accurate, analog and not digital. That's what I think. Because I'm a musician, I understand quantitation, and you're recording music and you're quantizing it. You have sequencers. I get all that, but it's not analog. Analog, in other words, a record has higher fidelity than a digital recording because you're not using ones and zeros. So there's no gaps. There's no quantitation. So I believe that a quantum computer should be the same way. Should be the same way. It should be analog and not digital, because you're not dealing with ones and zeros. So we know that they have qubits, and qubits can be a 1 or a 0. And then there's that in-between state, right? Where it's like flipping a coin and you can choose which one. But a true quantum computer is going to be analog, because there aren't any ones and zeros. And you can't make it be one. So all this stuff is coming out in my third book. And if anything like this, and I just heard actually last week, somebody said something about, they read a report about them creating a quantum computer that was analog. Well, what I want to do is I want to see how they build it, because I describe how it's built, how it's using organic material, how it's using artificial light, how the artificial light is spawning photosynthesis to create oxygen to give the inside liquid, organic liquid, oxygen so they can breathe and so they can compute. It's really deep. It's really fun. And if anyone out here on this channel hears anything like that, I would like to know, because it came out of my head. If I'm being downloaded, I want to know.
I'd like to jump in with something selfish. May I?
I can't hear you.
I really appreciate this dialogue. I'm not sure.
Can you speak louder?
All this, and I'm a musician. Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm new to this. I'm a musician, and been down the rabbit hole for a couple years. It's been quite an amazing 2 years to get interested in this topic, hasn't it? But the reason I'm on here today is because this week I had a CAT scan of my sinus region, and I've had lifelong, strangeness, starting with what I used to call an out-of-body experience at 4 or 5 years old. I'm not going to go into all those things, but I got a copy of the CD of all the imagery, and there's one image that's interesting. And now that Roger Lear is no longer around, I am very interested in what I can do next. I have not yet ordered the CAT scan since the scan was taken. That'll probably happen sometime next week. But if this turns out, this one image, if it's what I think it is, I kind of like some guidance on how I can make this a more useful situation than a selfish one. I'm obviously motivated by selfish reasons, but from what I've read and the things I've paid attention to, I'm not sure if I would want this removed or not. And I also am wondering if there isn't some value in being around some kind of equipment that could see if it's transmitting, and more specifically to analyze what it's transmitting. Like, is it a mathematic code? I've heard of low space, deep space frequencies. And I was wondering if anybody could let me know if there's anybody around that would really want to find out about this, maybe even help guide me to either having it removed or not having it removed, and being tested in some way. Anybody got anything?
Where is it located? I couldn't hear. You were muted.
I was muted. I'm sorry. It's behind my right nostril, kind of like in my eye area, maybe behind or below my eye. The image looks like it's, I shouldn't say that because I don't know how to read these images. So.
Hi, Ronald. This is April. I think if you become conscious of any kind of foreign object in your body, you can ask it to be removed, or you can dissolve it if you don't want it in your body.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you just said?
If you have a foreign object in your body, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You can choose to have it dissolved yourself through your consciousness, or you can choose to read a frequency. There's different radio frequency readers that you can try. And also, if you become conscious of a foreign object in your body, it can come out in very strange ways too.
Well, what I was kind of interested in, the focus of me putting it out to this group, you know, is there someone out there doing what Roger Lear was doing at this time? And is there someone with the right kind of equipment, not to just, it's not so much about whether or not I need it removed. It's about if it's useful to study it some way while it's still active in my body, to understand and analyze those frequencies. Yep, I think I'd be interested in participating in that for the greater good. Dan Smith, you got anything to say about that?
I'll just say, I don't know if he's still doing it, but Steve Colburn used to work with Dr. Lear. So I've no idea if he's still around on the scene even. But he definitely worked with Dr. Lear, and so did Kat King and Piper, I've forgotten her surname, Kat King, also an experiencer. We're also helping to facilitate that. So that might be a route in to contact those folks. Steve Colburn, Kat King, I can get an email for both of those folks if nobody else has that.
I did find out about Steve Colburn. I just watched a video about him today and got his email address. God, it was a radio show I was just listening to. So I did fire him out an email today.
Okay, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm over in the UK, and there's nobody here that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I live on the west coast of the United States, and it would be more practical for me to find someone out here.
Oh yeah, no, of course. It's just I'm aware of, you know, the States and Canadian side of stuff as well. But I'm just saying that there's not anybody here either. So it's yeah, we've yet to get the tame medics to come forward and really be brave enough to go on record. But I just wanted to say, if it's okay, just to go back to the music thing again. Not that I want to hop on about the music thing, but picking up, is it Robin on your talk about analog and digital, and again going back to Merrill Fankhauser. Merrill Fankhauser, and I think I mentioned earlier for anybody who wasn't here, he's headlining this album of experience music I'm putting together, and he was telling me about the album called, what is it called? Sounds of Mu, or to do with Mu as in Lemuria. And what it was is there was a guy, as I understand the story, from Merrill, who had heard this unusual frequency coming from the center of the ocean around where he lived, Malibu. And he used to be a code breaker in the war, something to do with frequencies. And he recorded these frequencies and he registered them as very unusual. And I think it was Michael Luckman who wrote the book Alien Rock, who's now passed on. I think it was him, because I think he was to do with producing, and then he passed this information on to Merrill Fankhauser. That's how the chain of events occurred, if my memory is correct. And basically, Merrill went out and investigated what these strange sounds could be, spoke to some First Nation folk, and they said, oh yes, and when the waters were lower there, you could see this rounded top of an object, of a building, and the ancestors would go and actually fish off there. And this sound is generated from this architecture. And the interesting thing is, Rob, is that so Merrill has incorporated Signals from Mu, that's what it's called, Signals from Mu is his album. He incorporated these unusual signals into this album, because this is what this guy, the older gentleman, also said is, you know, this should go into some kind of music album. And Merrill was, who's got his own little studios as well, was trying, you know, he got them all recorded analog, and then he went to digitize it. And he said, I had, you know, God's own problem trying to convert this analog into digital, he said it almost wouldn't go. I can't remember how he did that at the end of the day, Rob, but I thought that was amazing because, you know, that's the whole thing, isn't it, about the 440 frequency and the 432, you know, the standard that musicians use, and how that's, you know, how it's all the frequencies have been tampered with, sorry. So this is really fantastically interesting to me, though I'm not a musician. But I just thought that was a very interesting story about the analog and the digital, and I think that may have reference, again, in a kind of broad way, Rob, to what you were saying about the organic computer, yes, sorry, forget the name now, the computer you were mentioning, quantum computer. So anyway, I'm just throwing that in for what it's worth, folks.
And excuse me, I've got a message from Grant that he's having communications trouble, and was hoping that Dan Smith might step in with an update. Dan, are you out there?
Yeah. Oh, I'm here. I was going to ask Grant something about TS2 or TSA2. And I'm hearing about TSA3. So I wondered if Grant, well, I guess he's having communications difficulty, but that's, I think I'd heard from him that there was going to be a second release of the To the Stars Academy release, and now we're talking about a third release, maybe coming out of Salt Lake, out of the lake facility. Does anybody know about that?
You know, I haven't heard anything about that. But what I find interesting is that we are all looking for answers. I mean, we're looking hard for answers. And then you hear, you'll hear someone say, oh, well, you know, this has been going on, the same stuff for the last 70 years. Well, you know, that's a long time. That's older than me. Dope. However, all of this time, if it's 70 years, 70, right? 70. And everyone is still, all of us, well, not me, but all I hear is the same information rebranded over and over and over again. Even the latest tic-tac, whatever you want to call these experiences, they follow, and Grant has said this, in which I'm going to give it to Grant because he brought this up. He's been hearing the same stuff. We've been hearing this stuff, and it's almost like, you know, we're walking around like blindly following the same people, the same information. Now, I'm not coming down, I'm not criticizing anyone, but there has to be something else that we're missing. There's got to be, because all of these years we have been given from our ufology friends and from the government. It's like our ufology friends, they have secrets. And it blows my mind. It's like, well, you know, they'll take you to the very edge of information, and oh, you gotta buy my book. Oh, you gotta rent my video. Oh, yeah, and then you listen to it, and it's the same information that we've been hearing for 70 years. It's not different. There must be something else that we're missing. We have to I understand. I saw someone shaking their head. You know, I'm just a guy on the outside, you know, just listening to all this stuff. And I've been listening to it, you know what I do? the stuff that I hear from us, I don't put that in my book. I don't put it in my book. I wait for some type of information to come to me, and then I write, because what we're getting is the same stuff. We're getting, it's the government, it's almost like, it's like us against, it's like the 60s. Us against the government, and that's what I'm getting. It's like we're fighting the government. We want the government to tell us all this stuff, and then they don't tell us anything about anything. Our money gets taxed 50 times over, and that doesn't make sense. Our approach, I think, has to be different, because I think Grant is trying to do that. He's trying to look at consciousness as a way of identifying what we're looking for. And the lucid dream thing, this Tracy person that he had, it blew my mind, because I've experienced the same stuff. And you can't just go out and talk to anybody about this stuff because you're nuts. However, amongst us, there must be a primer. We'll call it a primer, like in Contact, the movie Contact, when Jodie said, "You found a primer," right? That 4D thing. We need the primer, whether it's consciousness, whether it's, we got to let go from all the stuff that we've been fed for 70 years, even from us. I mean, it's from us. Even we're doing it. I got all these secrets. Hey, my friend is from the CIA. I can't tell you this. It's the same thing the government tells us. There's got to be a primer. Who's going to find a primer? Is it a lucid dream? I don't know.
Rob?
Yo.
Can I make a comment? Is it okay if I say something here? No, I think you're right on with your comments. And I think what's missing is the psychological factor. After all, we're all having very psychic experiences. And it's not just about the outer, it's about the inner. It's not about the objective reality, it's about the inner reality. Now, I have a PhD in theoretical physics. And I also have 40 years of dream analysis and Jungian analysis and all that. Are you celebrating with me, or what are you doing there with your drink? But anyway,
I'm amongst friends.
Okay, but anyway, my point is, to your point, there's two things that I think are trying to come together. It's psyche and matter, spirit and matter. Because you see, at quantum physics, which is bizarre and at the quantum level in matter, and C.G. Jung, Carl Jung, the great psychiatrist back in Zurich, you know about him. I was just in Zurich last week talking to a Jungian analyst who's a good friend of mine. And he's written a few books. I'll give you the names. And it's all about this stuff. He's all into UFOs, crop circles, but he's looking at it, trying to bring together psyche, psychology, and matter. Because at the quantum level in matter, Wolfgang Pauli coined the term psychophysical. When you get down into the depths of matter, matter doesn't behave like matter anymore. And psyche doesn't behave like psyche anymore. They're neither in both. And so when you're having your lucid dreams, trust me, you're observing the quantum world when you're at that level. You're at a depth, and everybody on this forum, I think, has that fate, or you wouldn't be here, because you have been chosen, whatever. Not everybody's having these experiences. And so the onus is on us to go deep enough and try to, like you are saying, we can't just keep repeating what's going on for 70 years. We got to look at something else. That's why I brought up, has anybody been looking at the meaning of the symbols that these UFOs are assuming? Because if they're, we talk about language, you talk about, these movies, and like Contact and language. Well, this alien language, in my opinion, and my friend over in Zurich's opinion, they're communicating. They're telling us something about every time they show up, everything that you sense, like with your arm, it's a communication, and we're not getting the message. But if you look at Carl Jung's psychology and understand living the symbolic life, read this guy's books. He's Dr. Roth. He's got a book out called The Holy Wedding. He's got another book called Return of the World Soul, or Return of the Animal, is the Return of the World Soul. And if you read those, it's all about him and his analysis of Wolfgang Pauli and Carl Jung and what they were trying to solve in terms of the problem of evolving the consciousness of man and what's coming. So it's right in line with everything Grant says. Grant's on the right track. It's about consciousness. It's how we evolve our consciousness, but it's an alien language. And believe me, this alien is super smart, super smart. The wisdom coming out of this alien figure that we see portrayed before us in various disguises and shapes and forms, super smart. And boy, we got to step up to the line and start listening and trying to understand what's being said. So I highly recommend these 3 books to anybody that has all of an interest at our board, like you are, with this continued dialogue of 70 years, and we need something new. There is something new. I'll drop that on the table for the forum.
I want to talk about the 70 years, or like, if I could comment like what Dad was saying about the government. I think we should